Thank you, James, for that beautiful and inspiring piece of music. We were blessed by your gift of music.
Amen.
This weekend, nearly everywhere around the globe, people will place flowers on graves, not only to honor those who've given their lives in battle, but to commemorate family and friends whom they wish to remember. Since the late 1950s, the 1,200 soldiers of the 3rd U.S. Infantry on the Thursday before Memorial Day placed small American flags on each of the more than 260,000 gravestones at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. One Memorial Day, Rick and I spent in San Francisco. After walking the Golden Gate Bridge, we made our way to the Presidio. And driving slowly through the Presidio, we passed the cemetery. We enjoyed seeing all the beautiful American flags waving in the breeze and shining in the sun. At one point, we parked our car and we got out and we started walking along the road past the cemetery. With mixed emotions, I started reading some of the names on the gravestones. I felt sadness, awe, and patriotism. I wondered if there were family members attached to these names, and if these heroes were being remembered. Memorial Day. It's a day of remembrance. It calls us to remember those who have gone before us, those who have lived, those who have fought, those who have been faithful, those who have made a difference in our lives, those who have made a way for us to live life in a better way. Though Memorial Day wasn't established officially until 1868, there have been days down through time that call us to remember someone or something. We want to consider some memorial days today. Days recorded in biblical history that call us to remember who God is and what He has done. I want to share with you this morning some vignettes from God's Word as well as my personal experience. Each of these vignettes centers around a particular day of remembrance and points to a specific aspect of God's character. Now, you have in your bulletins a handout with the acronym MEMORIAL on it. You might want to take that out right now. And you'll want to jot down the characteristics of God that you see as we go through these days of remembrance. It was a perfect day, the end of a perfect week. Darkness had become light. Rocks had been shaped into place. Fish had taken their initial swim and birds their first flight. Flowers oozed with fragrance. Trees waved in the gentle breeze. Animals moved along with their mates. The garden had been made complete with the addition of a man and a woman. According to Genesis chapter 1, creation culminated on the 6th day when God made a husband and gave him a wife. But the day of all days, the day of remembrance, was the day God rested. It was the 7th day of creation, the Sabbath day. Sabbath means to stop, to cease, to rest. It was this day, according to Genesis 2, verse 3, that God blessed and sanctified. It was this day He set apart from all the others. When God gave the 10 Commandments, He wrote them with His own hand on 2 tablets of stone to indicate these commandments were to be preserved for God's followers down through time and obeyed by everyone. To this day, we speak a euphemism. We say, well, it's not written in stone, meaning if it's not written in stone, then it can be changed. All the 10 Commandments were written in stone. But there was one commandment God gave which was of special significance. And how do we know that? Because it begins with the word remember. The only commandment that begins with the word remember is the 4th commandment, recorded in Exodus 20, verse 8. It says, Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. This commandment refers us back to the seventh day of creation when God, our Creator, rested. Funny, isn't it, that this Sabbath day we are asked to remember is the one that so many of us forget. The Sabbath day is a memorial day. It calls us to remember. What does it call us to remember? Our Maker. The M in our acronym stands for Maker. God made the heavens and the earth. He made everything, and because of that, He alone is worthy of worship. Excuse me a moment, I'll be right back. It was a day I'll never forget. I was only 12 years old, but that day is engraved in my mind as if it were yesterday. For me, this little Jewish girl, it was a commemorative day. My family and I, along with all the other Israelites, had just spent the last 30 days mourning for our beloved leader Moses. Every day for the past 30 days, there had been special services with singing and weeping and storytelling. Why is it we seldom fully appreciate someone until they have passed away? I remember my parents, along with many others, grumbling against Moses' leadership. But now, whatever it was that my people grumbled about is totally forgotten. All people talk about is his wise counsel, his fatherly advice, and his unswerving faith. Each of us, even we children, cherished the memories of this godly, unselfish man. I couldn't help remembering his kind words, his caring manner, and his concern, even for us children. Moses was dead, but we could still feel the influence of his holy life. In spite of our grief, we weren't left alone. There was still the continual reminder of God's presence, the pillar of cloud that rested over the tabernacle every day, and the pillar of fire at night. Through these tangible symbols, God assured us He was with us on our journey. And though Moses was dead, we had a new leader, Joshua. Joshua was known as a warrior. He was courageous, resolute, persevering, prompt, and unselfish. Above all, Joshua inspired all of us with faith in God. I was thankful for men like Moses and Joshua. As a child, I looked to them for guidance and help on this journey to the promised land. I listened carefully to their words of instruction about the future. They talked often about a heavenly land, a promised land, and they reminded us over and over again to remember God, to remember what He had done for us. I guess that's why I've never forgotten that day, the day my ancestors had hoped to see, but instead died in the wilderness. This was the day we were finally going to cross the Jordan and enter the promised land of Canaan. For 3 days, we had camped on the eastern side of the Jordan River underneath a canopy of acacia trees. These were large, beautiful trees with orange-brown hardwood that wouldn't decay. Though I enjoyed playing with my friends under the shade of these acacia trees, I was just as anxious as my parents to get to our promised destination. But I have to admit, I was scared. Though the Jordan River can sometimes be a tiny trickle in the middle of summer, in spring, the river is at flood stage, and the swirling, muddy waters looked frightening to me. Though my parents tried to assure me, I could sense some fear in them as well. We had all heard the story of the crossing of the Red Sea many times. None of us alive today, except Caleb and Joshua, had experienced that crossing. We knew if we were to cross the Jordan safely, it would only be with God's help. I listened carefully as the officers went through the entire camp, giving these orders in preparation for our move. They said, "When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God and the priests who are Levites carrying it, you are to move out from your positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between you and the ark. Do not go near it." The ark was another visible symbol to us that God was with us. Inside this little chest made of acacia wood and overlaid with gold lay the tablets of stone on which God had carved the 10 Commandments. I often wished I could take just a little peek inside that chest to see those commandments written by God's finger. But only the consecrated priests were allowed near the ark, and not even they were supposed to touch it. 4 priests carried it between them on long acacia wood poles. Joshua told us, "Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you." Then he said, "This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you all the Canaanite peoples. See, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you." As soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord step foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and piled up in a heap. I watched in amazement as the priests carrying the ark stepped into the Jordan River. Since we had to keep a distance of about a half a mile, I couldn't see exactly what was happening, but my daddy was one of the priests, and he later told me that as soon as his toes touched the edge of that water, that the waters flowing downstream stopped flowing. They piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam. So all the waters flowing down to the salt sea stopped flowing. The priest stood in the middle of the Jordan on dry ground, while our entire nation, men, women, and children, more than 40,000 of us, filed past the priests. After everyone had crossed over, the priests remained standing there in the riverbed. Then 12 men, previously chosen by Joshua, each picked up a huge stone from that dry riverbed, and they carried it on their shoulder across to the other side of the Jordan River. God had given special instructions regarding these stones. They were to be set up as a monument. I watched as each man carefully placed his stone, piling them up on the western bank of the Jordan River. Joshua explained to us that these stones were to be a memorial to us forever. They were to serve as a sign among us, and in future generations, when children would ask, "What do these stones mean?" we were to tell them of the day that God cut off the waters of the Jordan so we could cross on dry ground. These stones were a visible symbol of a day God wanted us to remember. But more than the day itself, God wanted us to remember that he performed a miracle for us, so that everyone on earth might know he is ever powerful and is to be feared, which means to love, trust, reverence, and obey him. Years passed, and in the course of time, I became a grandmother. I was out walking with my grandchildren one day when we came upon this memorial, the 12 stones all piled up. Nearly simultaneously, my grandchildren